Has anyone ever called you clingy? Has anyone ever called you insecure? Have you been called non committal? And have you actually sat down and thought about why? Maybe you dismiss that as saying they're just being judgmental. Or is there some grain of truth to it? Maybe some introspection would help, or maybe we could help in this discussion. Welcome to Flow Goodness Podcast. Come and get some goodness. Today we're going to talk about attachment theory. And before we jump into that, let me introduce what our podcast is all about. In Flow Goodness Podcast, we focus on mental well-being for youth and families by discussing concepts, books, research, movies, life in general, case studies, everything connected with that in order to contribute and bring to the table a good podcast which would be useful for you in reconciling your thoughts or learning something from it. So, if you are anyway interested in anything to do with mental well-being and psychology, this is the podcast for you. I'm Satish Chalapa, founder of Flow Goodness, and I'm with my colleague Stephen here, who has majored in clinical psychology, and he's still pursuing his academics. He's in his 20s, I'm in my 40s, so I think we plan to give you a healthy view, balanced view of attachment theory.
When talking about attachment theory, the concept was given by John Bowlby, who was a psychiatrist, right? And he said that attachment is the lasting connectedness between human beings. And he very much talked about how a child's relationship with his caregiver, right? It can be parents or if in some cases not parents but other caregiver, how it forms a base for them to develop different attachment styles. And these attachment styles can carry on into adulthood as well. Okay. And so that is why the questions that were asked ahead, right? So these questions can be answered by this attachment style theory. Okay. And Mary Ainsworth, she developed on this very thing. And she did this strange situation test where a child was kept in a room and the mother was there, and the mother went out of the room for a while and then she came back in later on, and the test saw that how the child would react when the mother came back. So some of the child who were very secure reacted like gave a warm hug, and they carried on playing as they were, right, and nothing changed. But some who were avoidant, right, when the mother came back, they did not directly go to the mother. They avoided her, right? Yeah. And the anxious one, when she was outside, they were very anxious, like where has my mother gone and things. So they tried to figure out, like they saw this different attachment styles playing on, and that is how we come about on this attachment style theory. Okay. So let's talk about the characteristics of attachment style.
Okay, so there are four main characteristics of attachment style. One is, of course, right from the time you're born, you're held and you're fed. So there's physical intimacy. Okay, so and that matters a lot, and that carries on because hugs release oxytocin, right? And so and that connection and the mother-child bonding and release of oxytocin and the healing properties of so is well proven, it's well discussed as well. The second component is safe haven, where they can go back to the mother or to the primary caregiver and connect with them. The third component is the secure base, okay, from where the child can move around in that proximity within that area of view and explore the environment. And the fourth being the physical distress or the emotional distress that the child faces when there is separation anxiety. Right. So in a way we can connect this to primary fear as well. Like when we are born, we are just born with two fears. Okay, so one is the fear of loud sounds and the one is the fear of falling from the hands of your mother, of course. So in a way, if you connect those primary fears as well with the attachment theory, they go through a cycle in terms of delight, rupture, repair, and delight again cycle in the way the primary caregiver, whether it be the mother or the father, and the child connect when they play or when they interact with each other, because they're still trying to figure out that relationship, and this has a lasting impact. John Bowlby proved that, and of course, Mary Ainsworth built upon it, and there are subsequent multiple research to prove these concepts. So, and the 4 attachment styles is something that we need to discuss. So probably you can take up on that.
Sure.
So, yeah.
So we are going to discuss the 4 attachment styles. So the secure one, the anxious, the avoidant, and the avoidant fearful, which is also known as the disorganized attachment style. So it's been generally seen that most people are secure, right? I think it's 50 to 70% people, they have this secure attachment style, and we can say that it's the most desirable one. So a person with a secure attachment style, he has the security in his relationships. He can trust other people fairly, right? When there are certain conflicts, he's able to talk about them very openly. He's able to convey those conflicts very directly, right? He does not just shy away and put those conflicts behind, right? He communicates things very openly and clearly, and he leads with cooperation and confidence. While when we go towards the anxious attachment style, so what happens in the anxious attachment style is the person is always anxious that the other person might leave them, right? And they have a sensitive nervous system, we can say that, and they struggle with communicating things directly, right? They are constantly in this phase where they want reassurance from the partner that they still love them, right? That they are still there for them. And when we go towards the avoidant attachment style, what happens is, in the avoidant attachment style, the person kind of fears intimacy, kind of like fears that intimate relationship with the partner. And so, like, even though the other partner would want that intimacy, they would try to get away from that. So just imagine that if the anxious one and the avoidant one, they get together. The anxious one is the one who needs a lot of
I think it would be a match made in heaven. Sarcastic.
Yeah.
Okay.
And the avoidant one wants to get away. So even there we see this cycle being played out. And then we go on to the avoidant fearful, or even the disorganized type. So it is the one, those people with this particular style have very less self-esteem, and they strongly fear rejection. And some researches have also shown that this attachment style is linked with borderline personality, which is very interesting. But when we talk about these attachment styles, it must be understood that these are not fixed, right? These won't remain, like, it's not that we cannot change this attachment style. So this is a good thing.
So if someone called you clingy, then probably you have a nervous, anxious attachment style. Yeah.
Yes.
If someone said that you were insecure, then again you had a nervous attachment. You have a nervous attachment style, or an anxious attachment style. I'm mixing up the words there. Okay, anxious attachment style. And if somebody said you're non-committal, probably you have an avoidant attachment style. Right? So now we know where the comments are coming from. Probably, we'll develop a tool where you can figure out your attachment style.
True.
And probably it will help you in your relationships. And in that note, I want to take a little bit, discussion. I want to divert the discussion on the happening guy, the chief twit. Okay. So recently, it was very interesting that the chief twit's mom stepped into the media and said that, "Oh, don't be mean to my son. He is just a genius." Isn't that every brown guy's dream, to be called a genius by his own mother? It's like, great. Okay. However, it made us think. So, what do you think might be Elon Musk's attachment style?
That's pretty interesting. I mean, I kind of see him to be falling in the avoidant attachment style, because he's that kind of guy who might not be so committed to someone, and wants his own independence, has his own way of doing things.
Okay.
So
no wonder Amber Heard left, Twitter as soon as he took over. So yeah, that explains it. I think we can take a few more cases and then try and understand the attachment styles. So probably we'll do that over the next episode. Currently, we can talk about parenting styles and the impact of parenting styles on your attachment style. So, since that is the primary relationship with which you start, so of course there are 4 parenting styles. You have the authoritative, you have the permissive, you have the authoritative, you have the
authoritarian
and the neglectful, right? Yeah, thanks for that. So, of course, there are 4 primary parenting styles. There is permissive, there is authoritative, there is neglectful, and there is authoritarian. And then you have the 5th and the overall parenting style, which is the brown parenting. Okay, so which constitutes 3 factors, which is the 3 C's of the brown parenting, which is control, compare, and criticize. So, we'll come back to brown parenting, we'll do a separate episode on that and the impact of brown parenting. But coming back to the 4 parenting style, so permissive parenting involves elements where it is child-led, you give a lot of freedom to the child, it's basically not rule bound, so it is not like carrot and stick kind of a model. The authoritative is more of a carrot and stick model. You're good, you get rewards, you're bad, you get punished. There are regimented rules. So there is a bit of a structure there, and it is, as the word says, it's a bit authoritative.
Right.
However, it is different from authoritarian. It's not to be confused. Authoritarian it's my way or the highway, right? So authoritarian is a situation where less is spoken, and you just obediently follow. I personally know families which are that way as well. And then you have the negligent parenting. Negligent parenting is, of course, you start wondering why did you have the child in the first place. So because you're just engaged in your own life and the child is engaged in their own life. So if you look at the impact of these 4 parenting styles on the attachment styles, obviously you can start guessing at what's going to result in what. So first, what do you think is your parenting style? So how do you respond to your child's questions? How do you respond? How do you criticize your child? How do you deal with your child's successes and failures? What do you expect from your child, and what does your child expect from you? How would you define your relationship with your child is? Is that does your child fear you? Does your child respect you? Or does your child despise you? I know that's sad. So these are questions to consider. Now, based on research of parenting style and its impact on attachment styles, Stephen will throw some light on that. Yeah.
Sure. So researchers have shown that the authoritative and the permissive parenting style, they are linked with the secure attachment style. And the authoritarian, where there is very high control over the child, and the neglectful, where the child is neglected, right? Okay. So those have been linked with the insecure attachment styles. Okay. So insecure, we can say the avoidant, anxious, and the disorganized. They can fall under this category. So it is very interesting to see the way that the parents deal their child, they handle them, right? It passes on a message to the child about their worth, right? So if a child is loved for who he is, right, then he develops this self-concept that he has intrinsic worth. But if he always has to achieve something, get a certain amount of marks, get this or that trophy, then his worth is dependent on what he achieves, right? So in these ways, certain subtle messages are passed on to the child, and the child develops a self-concept about himself in those things. So when we talk about the authoritative style, there is there are certain boundaries, but there's also the freedom where the child can explore things and the parents are there at his pace, right? Though in the permissive style there's a lot of freedom for the child, right? But we can still see that these things help the child to understand that he's still loved by his parent, he's still accepted by his parent. While in the authoritarian and the neglectful styles, so in the authoritarian style, the parents are always, constantly disciplining the child, telling them that these are certain things that you need to do, right? And because of this, they might develop this tendency that, okay, if I don't behave the way that my parent is telling me to behave, then maybe I'll not get loved, right? So these things can form their attachment style. So the child might be very much anxious or fearful about it, even in this romantic relationship when he grows on, right?
So I just wanted to pitch in here. I always thought that if you want to get love, you have to run after a train and be able to climb that. So going to Bollywood. I'm just kidding. Yeah, okay. It's very interesting that this sort of I think I can directly connect that. It's very interesting, and I can directly connect that with workspace dynamics as well. And now, when people come with this different sort of parenting and different attachment styles, and they come into a workplace into one singular team, and then they have to work together on a project which needs, of course, commitment, coordination, teamwork, all the other dynamics of it. All these styles pop up, and then they push and pull the project in particular direction towards completion or towards destruction or towards stalling or cost escalation or towards better performance. So I think it's critical for people to know what their attachment style is, and it's critical for parents to know what their parenting style is. And what sort of impact long term they're going to have on the child. I would also mention, we did a small research with parents about a year and a half ago. Okay, so we asked the parents, what are the top 3 skills or top 4 skills you want your child to have. So they came up with decision making, problem solving, analytical skills, and relationship skills. So these are all fair enough, good expectations from the parents, but what have you passed on through your parenting that would enable the child? This is not a blame. I'm a parent too. I've got 2 children. So in a constructive way, how have you enabled decision making? Have you allowed them to decide? Have their choices? Have you allowed them to solve problems of their own, or have you solved their problems for them? Have you allowed them to analyze and come up with solutions, or have you analyzed it for them? And have you allowed them beyond the periphery of your little circle in order for them to build relationships, or have you built relationships and curated those relationships for them? So all these are critical components which actually go on to either make them successful, which will help them be happy, for them to flourish in life, or for them to keep dealing with trauma. Okay, so here is one small clip we would like you to take a look, and it is from a very interesting series called Big Little Lies, and it is a Bonnie scene. Take a look and then we'll have a discussion on that.
Well, it looks like it's time. I have to confess something that I'm not so proud of. And as I was writing, I realized I needed to confess to you first. So here it goes. I resent you for the childhood I had. I resent you for your impatience, for being scared of doing my homework without being yelled at, for all the kitchen cabinet doors you slammed, for slapping me, for all the bruises. I resent you for not feeling safe at home, I resent you for being ashamed of me. I resent you for all the sex I started to have when I was 13 to prove to myself that I could be loved. I resent you for my wanting to beat the shit out of everyone. I resent you for making me feel so fucking worthless that I settled for a man that I don't. But mainly, I resent you for killing a man. I killed Celeste's husband and he didn't slip. I pushed him. I snapped, and when I lunged at him, I was pushing you. And that push was a long time coming. And I want to forgive you.
So hope you took a look at that. So let me give you a little background to that scene that you just watched. So Bonnie is sitting by the bedside of her mother, who is actually on her deathbed, and all her pent up emotions and feelings and her opinions and her experiences, and this milestone where she is standing, where she has committed an unintentional crime and that has resulted in the death of someone, which actually by law is murder, and covering up that murder along with her friends. And so she's at this milestone and she's in this situation, and this is her last chance to express herself to her mom. And there she goes, and the words that come out of her mouth are very powerful. She says, I resent you. I resent everything that you've done. I resent your parenting style. So what she says is about how strict she was, how authoritarian she was, how abusive she was, how controlling she was, and how she always wanted to rebel, and what she did in order to rebel against that, in order to look for love in the wrong places, in order to prove that she is worthy of love. So it's a very disappointing, sad situation, but it is a reality in many people's lives. If that is the situation in your life, I think you should make efforts to reconcile, to amend it, to find ways of forgiveness, of reconciliation. This scene is from Big Little Lies. It was an award-winning series, and if you can take a look at it, it's useful. And there are many other clips which we will be sharing with you about parenting in the next episode, and where we will be discussing in detail about parenting, about disciplining, about various emotions, guilt and shame, and
yes.
all of those topics. It will be very interesting. So do tune in. That slip. And
It'll be very interesting. Go from
yeah, it will be very interesting. So we would request you to tune in. And coming back to attachment styles, so there are some lessons to take from this discussion. So one is your parenting style has a lot of impact on how your child, what kind of attachment style your child is going to develop. What kind of attachment style your child is going to develop. So that brings us to one question: when does parenting actually begin? Does it begin when you're married and when you actually get pregnant and when you actually have the child, or does it begin much prior to that? So what are your opinions on that? When does parenting begin? You as a parent, I'm saying the role.
Yeah. I think we learn a lot about how to parent from our parents themselves, right?
Okay.
And sometimes those are the same scripts that are being played out when you parent your child, right?
Yeah.
So it's important, like, but just when you have a child, right, the way that you start dealing with them, that is the things that you tell them, the signals that they get subtly, right?
Is
Those are the things that
that
matter.
why? Let me. I'm sorry to interrupt. Is that why, or is it a reason that we learn by imitation? We learn a lot by imitating our parents, right, and by those around us. Probably that is one way that we are imbibing this, and another one is, of course, John Bowlby, attachment theory, which strongly emphasizes that the base that you form, in early childhood with the experience with the primary caregiver, defines how you're going to view the world, how you're going to view relationships. Yeah, okay, that's an important contribution. So, I also feel that you becoming a parent begins much before you actually becoming a parent. So, there's always this whole argument about raising daughters, raising sons, but essentially you're raising parents, right? If they intend on having children further, at least in the Indian context, in the brown parenting context, it applies a lot. You are in a way raising successful or unsuccessful parents, or happy or unhappy parents. So I know it sounds like a lot of responsibility, but it's good to think on those lines and be accountable, be compassionate, be considerate, and amend if you have any wrong styles. And I think the second biggest learning is that attachment styles have an impact on almost every aspect of your life. It has an impact on your relationship with your parent, it has an impact on your relationship with your sibling, it has an impact on your relationship, on your romantic relationships, it has an impact on your job relationships, because it could make you an anxious person, unsettled, wanting reassurances, wanting validation, or it could make you an avoidant person, non-committal, aloof, not wanting to show emotions. You might come across as arrogant, and the other problems connected with it, or it could be, the perfect combination of anxious avoidant, which is disorganized, which is again more disastrous and its own negative impact, or you could come across as secure. Though secure is idealistic, but idealism not essentially works in everybody's life. So so what are some of the lessons that you take from this? What are some conclusions that we can draw from that?
So mainly what we can see is that these attachment styles, they play a very, very important part, especially in your romantic relationships, right? And you'll see these characteristics being played out a lot. But as we have already looked upon it, that these styles are not fixed, right? These can change. We can, by learning a few things, someone who has more anxious style can learn to communicate the way a secure person communicates, right? You can learn to deal with conflicts the way a secure person deals. The avoidant ones can learn it too, right? So that is like a good news, that you're not, and these attachment styles are not set in stone, but they can change. And what many of the psychologists and people who have worked on these, they say is that the first step is getting to know what is your own attachment style. And when you understand the different ways that you act out because of your attachment style, right, then that is the first step to go ahead and try to change it, or try to change certain aspects of it. So that is the main thing that we can learn from this.
Agreed. So that is good news, that there is scope for you to amend. First, understand your style, understand your partner's style, and then try and amend your style in order for your relationship to be better. Either whether it be with your parent or with your sibling or with your romantic partner. So I think that offers a lot of scope. So we'll conclude right there, and in our next episode we're going to look at parenting styles and its impact on attachment styles, and we'll deep dive into attachment styles. We also want to share some clips with you from Succession, so it's going to throw some insight on the various parenting styles. It's going to be pretty interesting. We look forward to connecting with you. Do tune in. Bye for now.